Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or happy tomorrow, depending upon where you happen to be located. Welcome to Online Presenters Toastmasters. As Marianne just described, we are a Toastmasters club, but we are different in that we focus on primarily on video, on doing virtual presentations. As such, we also place a heavy emphasis on technology. Usually, we hold relatively standard Toastmasters meetings. However, so that we can go into technology, dig down deeper into technology, on occasion we will have special educational presentations, and that's what we're doing this evening. Several weeks ago, we had an educational presentation on how to monetize your TEDx talk. And that one was very popular. We had a lot of good responses from that. I think we're going to be having an even more popular topic this evening as we learn about something called Bluesky. So let's get into it. Usage of the social posting website and app Bluesky took off like a rocket in November as the once obscure alternative to X, formerly known as Twitter, attracted writers, speakers, and influencers looking for a new online home and taking many of their followers with them. Online presenters David F. Carr, who was the club's founding president, will lead a special workshop tonight on why Bluesky is worth creating an account on and exploring. So please help me welcome David Carr.
Hey, hey. Thank you, Jim. So actually, Joni Laidlaw, our VP of Education, actually approached me about doing this workshop a little while ago. And I wondered too, well, we're not doing a workshop about online video. We're not doing a workshop on speaking. So how is this relevant to Toastmasters and online presenters? It is relevant to the extent that it is part of the grand digital environment that we are part of, which is always changing. And if you're trying to promote yourself as a speaker, if you're trying to get people to watch the replays of your TED Talk or your Toastmaster speech, you might want to use some of these tools to go out and promote on social media. And so I'm going to take you through a tour of Bluesky. Now, Bluesky is something that I have been obsessing with over several weeks. I'm going to give you some context on that. And this is the actual growth curve of Bluesky, or it was right after the election in the United States. And we'll have to talk a little bit about the political dimension of this along the way. But in early November, Bluesky went from being a pretty obscure social network. I had an account on it that I hadn't logged into in months. And then all of a sudden it started attracting this huge amount of attention. So why was that? What was it that people found interesting about Bluesky? And just to be really clear, Bluesky is a replacement for Twitter or for X, as the current owner of Twitter, Elon Musk, renamed it. It is the X service. You can switch from Twitter to X, and it's pretty much a one-on-one replacement. It looks very similar. It functions very similar. At least it functions similar to the way Twitter used to work. Which reminds me, blue sky smiling on me. Nothing but blue sky do I see. Bluebirds singing a song. Well, blue Twitter used to be a happy little bird inviting you to sing your song to the world, to share your thoughts to the world. And it got replaced with this big black X somewhere along the way, which changed the whole character of the service. And it created some pent-up demand for change that was kind of released after the election in the US. This particular graphic is actually from a publication called the Brazilian Report, because there was this political event that happened in the US that drove a lot of people to Bluesky. Before that, there was a political event in Brazil that drove a huge number of people to Bluesky. The government actually banned access to the X service. They were having a dispute over with Elon Musk over what accounts would and wouldn't be visible on the service. They wanted certain things to be banned, and uh, Elon says he's a free speech absolutist. He doesn't want to ban anybody. Eventually, they got it worked out. But during the period when people couldn't use X, people who were habitual users of it and wanted a substitute, well, they could have gone to Threads. So Threads is the service created by Meta, which is the owner of Facebook and Instagram. It's called Meta Platforms these days, as in metaverse. There's a long involved story there um, about how it went from Facebook to Meta, but that's the corporate name these days. Instagram is extremely popular. Very in some places, by some measures, it is bigger than Facebook these days. And Meta has promoted Threads. They've made it somewhat popular. But when push came to shove, when people wanted a substitute for Twitter or for X, they didn't choose Threads. They chose Bluesky. And so why is that? Well, we'll get into it. What is the psychology of that? So who am I to be telling you this? I'm David Carr. I'm the versatile and inventive writer, editor, and digital consultant. I was the original founder of this club, enthusiastic about Toastmasters. I run a web hosting service for Toastmasters Club called Toastmost, which I'd love to talk your ear off about some other time. And uh, before I was in my current job is I am an editor at SimilarWeb. I'm an editor of what they call their insights content, basically the data that they develop about what's happening in the digital world. I've done a lot recently on the growth of Bluesky through my work at SimilarWeb. But before that, I was a technology writer and editor for many years. I wrote a book called Social Collaboration for Dummies, which is about online communities for the workplace. I covered social media extensively. I've talked with a lot of people about what makes social networks work, what makes them grow or not grow. And so this is definitely a very interesting topic to me when something catches on that dramatically, trying to understand what's going on and what it all means. So that's me. And then I wanted to ask a little bit about you. So you should see a poll launching. And so the first question is, do you have a Bluesky account? Is everybody seeing the poll? Is that showing up? Yes. Okay. So if you could please vote on one of these options. Yes, you've got an account, you're actively using it. Yes, you're just starting to noodle around with it. Uh, yes, but I completely lost interest immediately. Um, no, but I'm interested in learning. And we seem to be sort of divided between the people who are yes, but just beginning, and no, but interested. So let's see, how do I go on to the next one? Are all the questions showing? Oh, okay. I guess all the questions showed up at once. So which of these services do you regularly use? Multiple choice. Number of people are pretty regular users of X, formerly Twitter. We've got quite a lot of Facebook because probably the biggest online community for Toastmasters specifically is the Toastmasters International official members group, and then a lot of districts have their own groups. So if you're active in Toastmasters, you're probably active on Facebook. Um, Less, there also is a group on LinkedIn, which is a bit less active for whatever reason. even though we're a professional organization. But I'm seeing really a minority of people who are currently really active, and I'm asking about also about which of these to use occasionally, not too different. Uh, and then a few people saw a post about this on LinkedIn. A few people saw a post about this on Facebook, where I tried to make some noise about it. There doesn't seem to be anybody here who saw it on Bluesky. So that's maybe an issue, is that the audience is not necessarily big enough, and the Toastmasters audience is not necessarily big enough for everybody to be able to see something about this event there and immediately sign up. All right. So I was showing a moment ago my LinkedIn profile, and you're welcome to connect with me there or on other services where I'm David F. Carr pretty consistently. Here's David F. Carr on Blue Sky. And again, it looks pretty much like a Twitter clone. We've got a main feed. I can scroll through here. I might see a lot of posts about politics because again, there's this big exodus driven by politics. Elon is too considered to be too closely associated with Donald Trump. People who don't like that are migrating away from the service. They're concerned that the actual algorithms that determine what you see on X are driven by some kind of right-wing political agenda. And so you do tend to have more of not necessarily left wing, but not very Trump friendly folks who've migrated over to Blue Sky. So I might see a lot of political posts here, but there are some interesting things here also. Well, actually, one thing I should mention is that this main feed is not driven by an elaborate algorithm. There are no ads in it. There's nothing necessarily slanting my experience in one direction or another. Um, there's probably some formulas in play, but it's more or less a straight chronological, most recent post from people I follow is my main feed. Then there's a discovery thing which mixes it up a little bit. That probably is a little bit more algorithmically driven, so you can choose to go there. You can see what's popular with friends in your network. But also, if I'm getting a little bit tired of all the political posts, I need a break. I'm pretty interested in politics, but I need a break from time to time. I might go over to the science feed and learn something about the search for extraterrestrial intelligence is the top post here. Um, and then here's a note about the rules of the science feed. So we're going to ban you if you're posting misinformation. Try and keep things relevant to science. Use alt text, which is particularly relevant for the blind, and also for various blind or visually impaired to be able to make sense of images, to give proper credit for things. Anyway, so some ground rules here. Signal boost is supposed to be a feed where we're boosting things that deserve more attention. A lot of times it's people who are raising funds for various charities. And I can customize this list. If I don't like what's turning up in Signal Boost, I can remove that from my personal list. This is people who are pretty much science fiction writers and science fiction fans, and a couple of feeds that are related to WordPress. So, anyways, I'm sorry. Those topical feeds are one of the things that do add some variety. If I look at my own profile, you can see some of the things that I've been posting recently, promoting this event, promoting some technical things that I think are interesting. Here's a fun one. Perhaps I misunderstood and that the Washington Post all along thought that democracy dying in darkness would be a good thing. Um, some people are annoyed at the Washington Post for various reasons. Uh, you can see various views on what I've posted. And then I have created a thing called a starter pack for Toastmasters. And starter packs are an interesting innovation. They're basically a way of helping you to get up to speed quickly in finding the people who you'd like to connect with on the site. And if you'd like to be part of the Toastmasters starter pack, and some of you are on this call are in the Toastmasters starter pack already, just let me know. I'm not being too choosy about it so far. I'm just trying to help us find each other. Um, so that's a little bit on what the experience looks like. I may come back to this later, if appropriate. So I'm going to cover what is Bluesky, and I'm going to cover some of the numbers story because again, that's where I've been spending a lot of my time in my day job. I'm going to give a brief history of social media. It's going to leave out some things, but some of the major events that we've seen along the way, and then more recently, how things have evolved to make room for Bluesky in the firmament. And we'll talk about politics, trolls, hate speech, banning people, not banning people, banning topics. Um, how does Bluesky compare, and the idea that it creates better engagement. And we're going to wrap up talking about will it last? And we are trying to structure this so that we have a little bit of Q&A, and then some time for table topics, so that you get a little bit of a sense of what this club is like if you're visiting here for the first time. So it doesn't have to be all Bluesky straight to the end of the meeting. And there definitely is some of this. The New Yorker's making fun is Bluesky is the place where people come to talk about being on Bluesky. And so you will see a lot of posts about, yeah, I'm really enjoying this. This is different. They'll talk about how it is different. And a while ago, when another service called Mastodon gained some popularity, there was a lot of that there too. Here's why everybody is going to move from X to Mastodon. Well, that didn't happen. Um, and so we'll see how long this keeps going for Bluesky, but I think it has potential to keep going for a good long time. So by the numbers. Well, here's a little heart attack that happened for X right after the election. This is people who deactivated their account on X, and this spike is November 6th, where that went to about 115,000 in a day. Now, on the scale of X, that's not that many, but you have to figure out that these are people who are particularly pissed off. They're they're not just saying, I'm going to use X less. I'm not going to go there anymore. I'm not going to log into it anymore. This is more like, the Saturday Night Live routine about breaking up with a girl, where you don't just tell her that you're breaking up with her. You say, I break with thee, I break with thee, I break with thee, and then you throw dog poop on her shoes. That is really declaring your independence if you're going to go to the problem of deactivating your account, which is the first step towards all your data being deleted. I've talked with a lot of people who have moved away from X, but they keep their handle because they don't want somebody else taking over and pretending to be them. They may go through a process of deleting all their content from X, but they don't actually delete their entire account. And then in parallel with that, this is the rise of Bluesky. And I'm showing it, if I put it next to X, X is still far bigger. But compared with Threads, which has been out since about July 2023, suddenly Bluesky zooms up past. And as I showed you before, the daily ascent was even more dramatic. Now it has leveled out a little bit, and so I think the next increment of growth is going to come harder for the Blue Sky service and the Blue Sky community. And so there was a rush of people coming in. How strong that trend continues remains to be seen. But this is month over month change in web visits, and I'm showing you most of these data are going is going to be for the U.S. because that's where the effect was most dramatic. So almost 200% month over month increase. Um, Now, on the scale of things, this is X, this is Blue Sky. Little bitty site in comparison. If we look by monthly active users of the iOS and Android apps, actually the gap isn't quite as big, but we see that Threads is ahead of Blue Sky. And these are different patterns of interactions. The apps in a lot of ways are what is more important to a social networking service is they want you to be uh, so addicted to this thing that you have to take it with you everywhere. You have to have it in your pocket and be pulling that out over dinner and ignoring your family. Um, so that's where these social networks want to get to. And of course, X is actually quite a bit smaller than either Instagram or Facebook. But X is kind of the one that these guys are most directly competing with. And even though Blue Sky is behind Threads in the app usage, it's behind by a lot less than it used to be. This is the rapid climb and then sort of a leveling off, even dropping a little bit over here, just by the daily usage. And if you want to see more of all this data, it is available on our website. I'll share that link at the end. But I wanted to try and put some of this in context of where do social networks come from and how do you get there? How does something about this like come out? And I don't know, some of you are old enough to remember dial-up modems and connecting to with the internet, where if you didn't couple things together quite perfectly, you heard this long reach. That was you connecting to the internet on AOL or Prodigy or Genie or CompuServe. It was slow. It was very text based. But there was the beginnings of interactions of special interest groups forming online. Then we had the evolution of blogging. Um, and so some of the early social media was actually people would post to their blogs and they would pay attention to other people posting to their blogs and they would comment on each other's blogs. And they had these tools called RSS readers that allowed you to monitor all of the blogs that you cared about and kind of tie it together. And then at some point, people realized, well, what if we just put this all together in the same platform so that you saw everybody's post in the same place? Um, and so you had LiveJournal was kind of a blogging platform for many different people with a social aspect to it. You had a service called MySpace that at some point was much bigger than Facebook. Um, it fell off the map. LiveJournal also is pretty much a relic of history. I don't know whether it still exists, to be honest with you. Um, Facebook came along in 2004. The first Twitter version was 2006. Then we have Instagram, Pinterest. TikTok didn't come along to 2017. That certainly has become huge. So moving from the mode of being text-based to more centered on images to more centered on video. And I haven't even talked about YouTube in here, but that certainly was evolving at the same time. By the 2010s, Facebook and Instagram are very huge. Twitter is influential, but it always had trouble making money, which is why it eventually got sold. And then content moderation was a huge challenge, especially in election years. So that there was always this question of was the platform biased towards one party or another? Um, what about hate speech. Now, is there any speech that should be banned? Um, what is the borderline? Should any account be banned, or do we want to have a free and open space? Do we want to have corporate control? Do the billionaires get to decide what gets excluded, or does the community get to decide what gets excluded? And of course, one of the big events that happened around this was the insurrection in the U.S., the attack on the U.S. Capitol by Trump supporters. And Trump was banned from both Twitter and Facebook shortly after that. He decided he would start his own social network, this thing called Truth Social, which has kind of grown in obscurity. It is far smaller at this point than Bluesky, for example, even though Bluesky is the new kid on the block. But it's, had some interesting things going on in terms of being a meme stock, potentially being a way of funneling money to Trump. Um, and somewhere in here, Bluesky actually starts as a Twitter project. So it's a skunkworks project within Twitter where a bunch of technologists were trying to create this new protocol. And one of the explicit things that they were trying to do was get out of the business of blocking posts or blocking users, to make that a community function, to distribute that function so that it could be performed by many different people and groups. And while they're working on this, Bluesky actually spun off as a separate company in 2021. So by the time Elon comes along and buys the company, Bluesky is independent. For a while, they didn't really have a product out there yet, though. Um, and then these last couple of years, things have been moving fairly quickly. Certainly for Twitter, in 2022, in April, Elon announces this unsolicited bid to take over the company for $44 billion. And people said that was an insane amount of money. At some point, Elon decided that was an insane amount of money. And he tried to back out of the deal, but a court forced him to follow through with it. Um, so in October, he buys Twitter. He announces massive layoffs. He particularly lays off all the people who were responsible for what they called trust and safety, which would be monitoring for hate speech, blocking content, blocking accounts, anything like that. Again, uh, he didn't have Bluesky around to help, but he wanted to get out of this business of making those content decisions. And there was this other open source platform called Mastodon, uh, which is very interesting. Um, Anybody can sign up to run their own Mastodon server. And so when you sign up for Mastodon, you have to choose which server. And actually, that's what probably confused a lot of regular old consumers who are thinking of finding something new. They didn't know where to go. They got confused, and so they didn't use that.
Well, David,
Yes.
before we get any more into this segment, we're actually supposed to be going into Q&A, and I'm seeing a lot of questions in the chat for you.
Joni, I was just about getting ready to take a moment to ask a few of those questions. So
All
is
right.
this a good time?
We
Do you
will
want a
we'll
question
take a
now?
break. I do have some stuff that I want to cover in the presentation, but we'll come back to it.
Okay. One of the questions was from Joni, actually. She wanted to know if Bluesky was making money.
I think that
No.
was from Andrew.
Oh,
Andrew, is Bluesky making money? If yes, roughly how much and how?
as far as I know, they aren't making any money. They have been bringing in new rounds of venture investment. Uh, One of the nice things about it is there is no advertising. But then again, advertising is how these services typically make money. They have announced plans to introduce subscriptions where active users will be able to pay to upload longer videos. And actually, they haven't explained what the full plan is. They were saying at some point that they had no plans to add advertising, but more recently they've said, well, maybe we'll have advertising. But some of the stuff that I haven't covered is because of the architecture of the service. If people got annoyed by the advertising or annoyed by other aspects of the platform, they potentially could fork off their own Bluesky service or their own competing service that would be compatible. And so there's this idea that you'll be able to take your account with you if something better comes along. But if I have a chance, I'll try and cover some of that stuff quickly.
Okay, and Joni did have a question about the monetization for those on the platform. So you can go ahead and continue. I'll check the chat for a few more questions.
All right. I'll try and speed up. Among the things in the Elon era that annoyed people was when the blue check on an account, which used to mean that this was the authentic person or the authentic brand, that heck, hello, that got replaced by a subscription program, which basically, if you pay us $8, we'll give you a blue check. So it rendered it kind of meaningless, but it raised some money for Elon. Mid 2023, they rebranded as X. Threads launched at that time, attracted a lot of interest, but a lot of it was just based on the fact that if you already had an Instagram account, you could create a Threads account more or less instantly. And so I actually find that I sign into Threads accidentally from time to time because something actually shows up in my Facebook feed or my Instagram feed, and I click on it and I find myself on Threads, and then I immediately leave because there's nothing that much interesting going on there. And there's also a lot of controversy over Elon restoring banned accounts, hate speech accounts, including the conspiracy theorist Alex Jones, who was noticeable for saying that the families of the kindergartners who were slaughtered at Sandy Hook by a mass shooter, they were just crisis actors. It was all fake. And so not a very nice person. 2024 in February, Bluesky finally comes out of its invite-only phase. So during some of these other controversies, people couldn't really just waltz in and set up a Bluesky account even if they wanted to. And then just recently, Musk decided that they were going to change the rules for blocking people that you find annoying on the service. And that pissed off a lot of folks. And I started hearing people say, well, as soon as I'm going to stay on Twitter or I'm going to stay on X through the election, these pundits who wanted to make their voice heard on the election, but as soon as the election's over, I'm out of here. And that's essentially what happened immediately after the election. There was sort of this pent-up demand of people who'd been planning to leave, and then suddenly they left, and they tended to choose Bluesky over Threads or any other alternative. I thought it was very interesting when this particular guy made the jump. So he's a Reagan Republican, an authority on international relations, now a former Republican because he is very much anti-Trump. But for a long time, Tom Nichols argued that as long as he could block people he found annoying, he thought that it was worth sticking around on Twitter, that it was bigger, that it was better. He hadn't seen anything that was good. Recently, he's been saying, I'm still going to post on X, but Bluesky is where the real conversation happens these days because X is such a cesspool. So when he made the jump, I thought that was significant. Some of this stuff I'm going to have to go through really quickly because I have been rambling on for too long. they have this idea of a stackable moderation system where, again, they want to distribute out the responsibility. Other developers can create their own rules, their own feeds. Um, within the system, it is pretty easy to block an account. You can also mute either a thread. You can mute certain words. I'm hearing too much about this topic. I'm really sick of it. You can just say, I don't want to hear anything more about Christmas. I hate Christmas, and so you can mute the word Christmas, and you won't see any posts that use the word Christmas. You might see some that use Xmas or some synonym, but you won't see any Christmas posts. Uh, they have this distributed protocol, and other programmers can come in and build extensions to the system using that protocol. Um, just how open and distributed all that is, there's some debate among the techies. But you can have custom feeds. I showed you the science feed. Some of these are actually hosted on external servers, and they have their own programs, their own algorithms deciding what you're going to see on that feed. So that's another way that things can be customized. And you can have integration. So I have an integration active that allows me to show comments on a WordPress blog, and it says, and join the conversation on Bluesky. And so I can take advantage of all the work that they're doing on muting obnoxious people, excluding obnoxious people. Um, and so I can have a more filtered feed of posts than if I just accept comments directly on the blog, because spam is a big problem on blogs. And it is possible to set up a custom handle. So instead of being davidfcarr.bluesky.app, I'm at davidfcarr.com. It's synchronized with my website as a way of authenticating that it's the real me. Starter packs I mentioned. In addition to mine, you can find them for journalists at any publication. And I thought this was very interesting when the New York Times suddenly added a Bluesky sharing link to its site, and noticed that it's ahead of X, and Thread's not on the list at all. And why would the media do that when this is still very small and growing? Well, people are reporting, and I've done some research through SimilarWeb to back this up, that Bluesky is basically punching above its weight. Even though it's relatively small, it's sending a lot of referrals to these news sites, much more than they get from either Twitter, which is somewhat hostile to the media, or Threads, which they actually kind of made the decision that people didn't want to see news in their feeds because it made them unhappy. Which, there might be an argument for that. Maybe that's a reason to choose Threads if you find the news too aggravating. But if you're a publisher trying to attract attention to your news site, it's helpful. And if you can get the press on your side for any digital property you're trying to grow, that can be a gateway to greater growth. All right, and I'm going to stop there with the presentation. And I will just say, in response to the question that came up about the income that they're generating, which is not much right now, that is a cause for concern, because if you're going to invest time in building up a presence on this service, you might like it to not go bankrupt. It might be good if they had a business plan. Well, they have a business plan, they're working on it, but we don't know yet that business plan is going to work. Probably subscriptions alone won't be enough, but I don't know. Maybe several tiers of subscriptions. Maybe if people are sufficiently engaged and attracted to this service, maybe Bluesky will make good money off the subscriptions. Maybe they'll figure out a way of doing advertising. Although, again, the CEO said that one problem with that is because we have this glorious open architecture, if we're running ads, that doesn't necessarily mean that every user sees the ads. They could build their own custom Bluesky client, or somebody could market a custom Bluesky client that gives you ad-free Bluesky. So if you're a company trying to make money off of it, maybe that's not a good thing. Um, but in principle, the openness creates a lot of interesting opportunities. Maybe there will be shopping on Blue Sky. Maybe there'll be shopping channels, and they'll be able to make money that way. But it is something that I think is at an interesting phase for getting involved in and exploring. It's not necessarily a sure thing that it's going to stick around. All right, with that, I better take some questions, and then we
Okay.
promise we'd reserve some time for table topics.
David, Asil asked, she may have missed it, but are there differences between X and Blue Sky that you haven't mentioned?
That I haven't mentioned that.
Or that you could even reiterate. She came in, she may have missed it.
Well, part of it again is that it does have this model of being open and extensible by other web developers, where they're volunteer open web developers. And I haven't worked directly with the protocols, but there's somebody who wrote this plugin for featuring comments on your site and also for automatically sharing to X. And so I'm trying to come up with an extension to that that would allow, say, we do have an online presenters account on Blue Sky, and to have it automatically post a promotion for our next event a few days before the event is happening, so that we can maybe get some people to come in here from Blue Sky. So I think that kind of customization is very interesting. But a lot of it is really just getting away from the Elon Musk ownership. That's been a lot of the attraction to it.
Okay, and David, if you can put the name of your channel in the chat, that would be great for one of our guests, Anura.
Okay.
All righty. There are a couple other questions in the chat. Do you have time for it, Joni?
Yeah, if you
Joni had one. She had several.
Let's try and answer the questions and then move on.
All right. Joni had several questions. Joni, why don't you unmute and maybe ask one or two of your questions?
All right. The first one, because you referenced Mastodon and people not porting, he said there is no algorithm. I'm not sure if you meant it the way it came across, because if you don't have an algorithm, who chooses what you see on your news feed, especially if you're not tech savvy to adapt it? And Twitter didn't do that. And my second question, you could actually answer in copulation with that. For those people who had an issue with the character limitations of Twitter, and who are not big on the reading of text, other platforms offer video formatting. How much of that will be incorporated into Blue Sky?
Right now, you can post videos. They are limited to 1 minute, and I forget what the exact file size limit was. But it's partly because they are operating on a shoestring and don't have a lot of money coming in. So they're trying to keep the infrastructure expense of running the whole thing down by having a relatively tight limit. Now there are virtues in brevity, and so the short posting service. And the length of posts is what, 300 characters. And so it is the sort of thing where I find it kind of ridiculous when people try and write a whole book or a whole essay, and they have to string together a thread of 300 posts in order to tell that story. At some point, I think you're using the medium wrong. It would make more sense to go off to your blog and write a blog post. And I say that because I've got a blog and I write blog posts. But use the social platform to tease that other piece of content. And that's kind of the way Twitter originally worked. I think if you buy the subscription, you can now write really long posts. Um, uh, and again, I'm not sure it's really correct for the medium. Um, but you know, if you never enjoyed Twitter like it used to be, you probably won't enjoy Blue Sky. There are some interesting characteristics like the topical feeds, the science feed. There are things that I find attractive that are different, and it's still early. You know, other stuff may come along, but as of right now, if you really hate that format of very text-based social media, this might not be for you.